book talk is gonna have my head for this.
So, hello. My name is Blaze, and while I really don't enjoy reading, I absolutely love book reviews.
So, of course, that means I watch a lot of videos about books I never want to read.
Which includes this: A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. I've heard a lot of different things about these books. They're good, they're bad, they're win for feminism, and they're mountain-shakingly orgasmic. But I don't care about all that. I care about making redesigns. Okay, and maybe editing some of the story. So, who better to start this blind redesign attempt with than the Queen of Carrion herself, Miss FEYRE Archeron? Okay, so how I needed to begin was I needed to know who she was, so I could figure out what I hated and change it.
So, according to the wiki, FEYRE is slender, pale, has golden brown hair, and blue-gray eyes. She's also sexy as fuck, because of course she is. Okay, so looking at this, I see a few things I want to change. Small things mostly, but also her vibes.
FEYRE, to me, seems like she's supposed to be a girl boss, but just kind of ends up falling really flat. She's supposed to be feminism, but yet is not feminism. Feminism isn't about being strong, it's about being whatever you want. It's freedom and expression, which I feel FEYRE does not fit. So, let's begin, shall we? For FEYRE, my inspirations for her were Swedish midsummer outfits, Dutch traditional dresses, and Disney princesses like Belle from Beauty and the Beast, but also ones like Merida from Brave. I wanted her to seem strong, but bright and cheery at the same time. I made her hair curlier, and she's now a strawberry blonde, both from her hair getting lighter from sun exposure, and I thought it would nicely contrast both the greens of the spring court, but also the dark tones of the night court. To call back to the fact that she's an artist, she now also embroiders all of her own clothes, as a way to express herself when she's unable to paint. Her sisters deem it a waste of time and thread, but it brings FEYRE joy. She represents her sisters on her apron as well. Nesta is a rose, and Elaine is the jasmine flowers. Also, I decided to retcon her general hourglass body shape, and I now made her strong and skinny, and pretty rectangular. She's very lean with a lot of muscle, but not much bulk. I imagine as she stays with the fairies and fills out more, she'd get a more pear-shaped body. My FEYRE also broke her nose from slamming into a tree branch while chasing a rabbit or something. She has assorted scars for similar reasons. I also made her freckles more prominent because her skin has been exposed to the sun more. I also made her dress a little shorter to make running easier, and she has a dagger sheath on her leg for quick and easy blade retrieval. The embroidered bag on her hip usually holds coins, but sometimes herbs or cool rocks she finds out in the forest. She also has an arm guard because she's basically a ginger Katniss Everdeen now. I really like the detail that FEYRE can't read in the first book, but I imagine she's actually really good at math. Because she needs to be, and able to barter and sell the pelts and herbs that she collects, duh. Nesta's the only one of her sisters who can read, so she deals with any of that, so it never really poses a problem for FEYRE. As for FEYRE's personality... okay, so this is from the wiki, kind of chopped down to only get to the nitty-gritty. FEYRE in the books is hardworking, selfless, compassionate, sarcastic, merciful, confident, but also cruel, seductive, good at lying, and easy to anger. So, the glaring problem I see is that I believe a lot of these contradict each other. Some are pointless, and some just seem very random. Kind of like they're just added for specific scenes and not the entire story. Like, for example, was there ever even a reason she was good at lying in the books? I mean, I wouldn't know, but I've never heard of one, so I'm assuming not, which is kind of frustrating. FEYRE kind of gives the vibes of, whoa, look how cool and amazing and badass, but also so nice and sweet and nice she is. Which, No. So, with all that smack being said, how would I change her? First, I admit I really do like the stubborn and determined parts of her personality. I mean, it makes sense. Most hunters that I know in real life are as stubborn as mules. So, I'm definitely okay to keep that. While I do like that part of her personality, a lot of the others just feel a little off to me. So I decided that for my version of Feyre, she'd kind of be more like an unsocialized puppy. Since her family lives in the middle of the forest, she doesn't get out much. She's not all that charming nor seductive. She's actually really blunt and takes no shit. She has a pretty sarcastic streak. I mean, you kind of have to when you live with Nesta, but you know. She's also really not that compassionate, but she's not really very cruel either. She takes what she needs, nothing more and nothing less. She has a strong sense of justice that way. She believes everyone should have their fill and nothing more. Because of her stubbornness and her need for justice, she does tend to get into fights, because of the principle of it all. But, of course, this makes it so she's really unwilling to accept other ideas and opinions, especially about those horrible, wicked demon spirits like, the Fae. So, other things that I wanted to change are, in my version, the Archerons never lived with money. Feyre's family has been dirt poor for as long as any of them can remember. Their mom had ran away from a life of wealth and privilege to be with their father, much to Nesta's dismay and resentment once she had found out. In the house, Feyre still does all of the harder outside work, like hunting and foraging, whereas Nesta and Elaine stay home cleaning, tending to their father, cooking, etc. Elaine also tends to the garden and the few livestock they have, like chickens. Nesta handles any bills, documents, etc. Their father is sadly catatonic, caused by a stroke many years ago, so he's unable to help out or really even talk. Feyre and Elaine don't mind, but Nesta has a few more problems with it. Also, of course, because it's the entire point of the first book, the one thing that can break Feyre's strict idea of justice is the Fae. Because she doesn't need to kill the shape-shifting Fae she just found in the forest while she was hunting, but she did, with no mercy. Oh, if only she knew what would befall her from that terrible decision. Okay, so I was actually trying to be a good video maker by having a script for the first part of this, but I still have a lot of time to fill out and some other things to talk about, so I'm just gonna ramble for a little while until I decide to be done. So, one thing that I've seen in a lot of book reviews about the book, obviously, is that a lot of it is supposed to be feminist, of course. And one of the main parts about it is there's a reoccurring line or a reoccurring sort of theme of it being Feyre's choice. Like, I know Rhysand, at least, says, "It's your choice, Feyre," multiple times to her. But I found a lot of issues with this, and, like, maybe I'm just a super liberal feminist or whatever, but I think it's a really heavy-handed way to give a female character agency. Like, a woman shouldn't be needed to be reminded, like, hey, by the way, it's your choice to take agency in your own life. A woman shouldn't need a man to tell her that she can make a choice. She should just be allowed to make a choice. I would have loved to see more scenes in the books. I mean, I haven't read them, but you know, where Feyre is like told to do something else and she's just like, no, actually, I'm gonna go do that. Or she has it, or just ways to show that she has choices in a non-heavy-handed manner. Like, Tamlin is saying something about needing to go one way, and Feyre's like, I'm gonna go the other way, and that works out because she has logic and reasoning, not just because she wants to refuse what a man wants, you know? Because I've heard in a few book reviews that she does stuff like that, where she basically just refuses because it's a man saying it and not for any actual valid reason. I mean, don't correct me if I'm wrong. I don't really care if I'm wrong. But if I am wrong, oopsies. I just think that the feminism metaphor gets really heavy-handed at a lot of points, which makes the whole thing kind of fall apart, because then people who aren't feminists are annoyed because they hate having to hear about feminism in their little fantasy porn book. But the people who are feminists don't like it because it's not really all that feminist. It's just a man telling a woman she can be a feminist, which is kind of like, you know, the complete opposite of the point. Like, I think FEYRE has some of her own agency on her own. And it does make sense that when she would be around people who kind of have a more powerful aura, that she would kind of want to stay back and be a little meeker. I'm sure she had to multiple times because of people like Nesta, who, if they were not listened to, would get super mad, so she would just kind of cower back. But if the book's entire point is about her, reclaiming being a woman, I'm sick, by the way. I'm so sorry if you can, hear that. If it's about her reclaiming being a powerful woman, she should be able to see these super powerful men and be like, and I'm an equal to you, question mark? Without it being super heavy-handed and just, kind of gross. A lot of the times the books kind of give me the vibe of, only, have you seen those TikToks? You know, where ladies are like, it's so nice to finally have a masculine aura so I can be all of my feminine energy. And it's like, you can have feminine energy without masculine energies being around you. I don't know, maybe I'm chronically online, but that was just one thing I was thinking of. This kind of goes along with that, but one thing that I don't understand, especially in fantasy books, is kind of the need to include misogyny and stuff like that. Because they're fantasy books, they don't have to follow real life. And, I don't understand why the authors will still include it for no reason. Because you don't need to have misogyny to have feminism. They exist outside of each other. And you can have a character being feminist, you can have themes of feminism without having to include misogyny. And, a lot of the book doesn't even include certain feminism parts. That's a bad way to word it. But, none of the men in the book are really emotionally vulnerable ever. When that would have been a great thing for feminism to show, hey, not just women are emotional, and hey, men can cry too, and stuff like that. All of the men in the book are mostly tough guys who have to protect the females around them, and it's ew, okay, that's not my favorite. And then it's also not my favorite that a lot of the characters who are misogynists, say Tamlin in the later books, he becomes pretty misogynistic, and it's okay, but you already set him up as a hot guy who's a love interest. And I think that's pretty in bad taste to do that, to have these characters, or Rhysand, when he doesn't let FEYRE know that she's pregnant. Why are we having all these men who are painted in a good light for at least some part of the story be misogynist? Jesus. And then, of course, there's also a lot of issue I have with how the books represent other female characters. I've heard in a lot of different reviews, especially ones by, With Cindy or something, that Nesta is usually seen as, really chaotic and destructive and rude and horrible and cruel. And I've never really seen any sort of attempt to kind of humanize her outside of, her being with Cassian and whatever. And I think that's pretty not feminist either. The idea of Nesta getting better because of Cassian, or Cassian being involved with that, it just kind of leaves a bad taste in my mouth, because that's also what's going on with FEYRE almost. And or that FEYRE is the sweet calm energy for Tamlin and Rhysand both. And it's just yikes. I don't think it's a very good look for feminism that
this girl is so demonized when clearly she's struggling with a lot on her own, and it's fixed by being paired with a fairy with a big dick. And I mean, I have problems with Elaine too. I think it's kind of strange that she's not nearly as demonized as Nesta is, even though she's clearly like allowing Nesta to be super cruel to FEYRE in the books, like making FEYRE do literally everything. Like, as far as I can tell, the only thing Elaine does around the house is garden. And so I don't know why she's not demonized nearly as much. I know Elaine is described as like shy and sweet and really pretty, but like that's not very girl boss. That's very mean girl actually. Of like, oh, since she's like pretty and soft spoken, obviously she could do no wrong, and this one girl who's so rude and like whatever sucks. I'm like, no. Like, paint both Elaine and Nesta as bad people if you're gonna paint one of them as bad people, you know? And I guess also I kind of hate how the sisters' relationship as its own hasn't been able to, like, be a super big plot. Most of the time it's based around the fairies or whatever. But I would have loved to see more stuff like, you know, FEYRE doing all of this to get back to her family, or FEYRE trying to protect her sisters, or Nesta doing something. I'm pretty sure she does something in the books that's like helpful. But something like that where she tries to help FEYRE. Like, it would show Nesta's the oldest sister, and I have an older sister, and I know she'd do anything for me while also insulting my very existence. So I don't get why Sarah didn't decide to go that way for ACOTAR. And clearly ACOTAR has a lot of themes of like family and found family. So I thought it would have been a really good thing to do to include that. But I mean, what do I know? I haven't really researched the sisters, so.
And without further ado, here is Miss FEYRE Archeron herself. I had loads of fun doing this, and I actually decided to make her some spring and night court designs too, which you will see next. But for right now, this is her human world design, what she started book 1 with. And I hope you'll enjoy. Now, on to the next designs.
Okay, so for Spring Court FEYRE, I'm actually going to start my little rambles off with kind of talking about how the fairy world works, at least in my opinion. So instead of it just being like another continent right by the human world split off by a wall, I imagine that after the war and like the fairies separating from the humans, they used their magic to kind of create a pocket dimension that can only be gone through with the access to magic, of course. And like, it happened so many thousands and thousands of years ago that fairies have kind of become a myth. So like FEYRE hates the fairies, but kind of in like the way that, say, like people hate La Llorona. Like, there's no scientific evidence, but if you believe it, you probably hate her. I mean, she does murder children and everything. So yeah, that was just kind of a little mini explanation for how I imagine that works. So then I was reading through the wiki, and like her story of her getting taken by Tamlin, I kind of didn't really enjoy how like he got her to go, of like, oh, I'm gonna kill you or you have to come with me. Like, with how stubborn I imagine FEYRE is portrayed and how I want to portray her, just the threat of death would not, one, get her to leave her family, and two, go with her the thing that she hates the most, the Fae. So I imagine when Tamlin bursts in, he more so threatens, I'll kill you and your family if you don't go. And that's the only reason she does go, because she's fine with herself dying for her principles, but she would never be able to exist, even as a ghost, if she knew that her family was dead because of her. So that's why she goes with him instead. And the spring court is very nice. Obviously, FEYRE doesn't really like being there. She hates fairies and everything. But, you know, I wanted to inspire both her design and kind of the spring court off of both Sweetest Midsummer again, but also kind of by Japan. So, like, I imagine a lot of their architecture is very flowy, very clean, a lot of trees dotted around, a lot of little streams and ponds and everything. And so that's kind of what FEYRE's outfit is based on. Her bottom, I can't remember the name of the pants, but they're kind of like samurai style pants. And then the top is just kind of like what would be an undershirt, with the middle being, man, I really wish, obi, I think it's called, being kind of reminiscent of a leather one of those. And then she has like this little crown of antlers, and I imagine in the spring court, just because of like the magic floating in the air, the longer you're there, the more flowers grow on you because of the magic like flying around in the air making things grow. I just thought that was really that was a pretty idea. So FEYRE has loads of flowers all over her, and the antlers are kind of like, I don't want to say a crown, but she found them and she was like, whoa, this is cool. And Tamlin's like, that was my mother's or something. And she's like, oops, yikes, sorry, dead mom. But yeah. And then I think I'll probably go more in depth into this if I design Tamlin. But one of the things I really wanted to change was kind of how the curse worked, because the books are based off Beauty and the Beast. That's no secret. And the entire point of the masks, even Amarantha says this, like, the entire point of the mask is like, hey, whatever human girl hates Fae has to not be able to see your face. It can't be based just on like a Fae's natural beauty alone. But I feel like in the book, like, the masks don't cover anything. Like, the top half of the face is well enough, yeah. Like, that definitely helps in making a face. But the fact his eyes aren't covered, the fact the mask form fits to, like, his eyebrows and his cheekbones and nose and everything. And, like, she can still understand his voice, she can still see his hair color, like, she can still make out loads of features on Tamlin. So the mask is kind of pointless other than to be, like, edgy and emo and all masquerade-y. So the actual curse, I imagine, because I'm pretty sure it's the same as like Beauty and the Beast, where it's only the people who were at like the get together or party that got cursed. So I'm gonna say that, like, whoever was in the Tamlin's castle or in his royal court got cursed. And instead, depending on how close you were to Tamlin, either as a person or in rank, would be how badly you're masked. So when I designed Tamlin, his entire like shoulders up is going to be completely covered. Like, not a single definable feature. I think I'll even have it so his voice is like messed up. But say if you were just like a house cook who cooked for the other house cooks or something, you would maybe get a mask like a masquerade mask where you can still make out most of the features, but it's still not that great to have. So I thought that both makes the curse worse, because it would be even harder for FEYRE to like have to fall in love with just his personality when he's wearing this super monstrous covering scary mask. But also, like, it makes it seem more like a curse and like a punishment. Like, not only does Tamlin have to worry about getting a human girl who hates him to love him, but he also has to live in this monstrous, ugly, painful, debilitating existence where he can't, like, exist as a person. And then you could also have really nice moments where FEYRE maybe, like, kisses the tip of the mask's nose or something, and that would be really cute. Or then when the mask gets taken off because the curse gets broken, she would be able to see his real face, and we could have like a nice little thing of like, because she's an artist, what if she ever like drew pictures of Tamlin or something, like how she imagined he looked, and he would be like, haha, you made my eyes too wide, or blah blah blah. But like, she sees his face and it's like, I don't even have the artistic talent to replicate like your beauty or something. Like, that'd be sweet, y'all. I should write a book. So, with all that nonsensical rambling aside, here is FEYRE from the Spring Court. I'm 50-50 on the design. I don't really enjoy it, but I also don't really hate it. I don't know. I may come back to it. I just feel it's a bit too, like, modern and stuff. But I also do want to be able to do a night court, or I guess more like under the mountain FEYRE. So I'm also going to do that real quick. Moving on. Okay, so for this part, I do admit, even in the book reviews I've watched, I don't know that much about the time of FEYRE being under the mountain. Most of the information I got for that was on the wiki. And, you know, since I don't know that much about Under the Mountain, I can't really talk too much about it. But it really just makes me realize how, like, bad Rhysand as a love interest is. Like, I understand, I know that he was, like, under Amarantha's spell and also being abused by her. But in abuse victim becoming an abuser, that doesn't excuse them being an abuser. And especially with what Rhysand did to FEYRE, like, look, I could understand Rhysand acting terrible when Amarantha is around and watching him. Yes, obviously I could understand that. But when he grabs FEYRE's exposed bone and pulls it just to make her agree to come to the night court every once in a while, that's literally, he did not have to do that. Amarantha was not watching him. He just decided to do that to be a cruel prick, basically. And I really hate that in the books it kind of seemed like just because Tamlin was also bad, not nearly as bad as Rhysand, but whatever, not nearly as, like, that Tamlin wasn't nearly as good as he used to be, that it's okay for FEYRE to just run off with Rhysand. And actually, he's a good guy because he has the safe haven. Girl, what are you talking about? He was abusing FEYRE too. Like, I would have loved in the books if it was a super slow burn through 3 books showing that Rhysand is actually super manipulative and he planned all this out and he manipulated an already vulnerable FEYRE to leave someone who's safe and who will protect her so that he can, like, grab a hold of her and all of her new powers because she got reborn. And, like, ooh, that would have been so much cooler and would have given you all the more reason to read all 3 books and read the series and reread too to see all the foreshadowing. But no, we have to just have the main love interest be a bad guy, like, be a good bad guy. Like, of course. Like, I think Rhysand would have been a great either anti-hero or just a villain in general. Like, I think he would have been awesome at that. Especially, like, I don't really like how many powers he has in the books, I'm not gonna lie. But it would have been so much cooler if he had just, like, very specific powers. Like, kind of what I'm imagining is really his only power is he's able to have people believe what he believes. So say, like, he sees a pretty woman, and if he believes wholeheartedly that she should have sex with him, Rhysand can use his powers on her so that she will full-heartedly believe, yes, I want to have sex with you, you know? So he could, like, convince people, like, oh, you should follow me because I believe I'm the best leader. And, like, that's how his powers work. I think that'd be really cool. But I'm not an author, so... So, with all that being said, here is the final design of the video, Miss FEYRE from the Night Court, or Under the Mountain, more like. I'm actually pretty happy with this. I didn't really have the energy to make it like a full-blown piece of artwork, but, you know, I get a pass for this being my first ever YouTube video. It's already almost 30 minutes long, so whatever. But with all that being said, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoy, and Tamlin will probably be next. Hopefully, that's the goal. Bye!